Overlord is a series that I like overall, but I can't recommend it to most people, and that's simply due to the fact that most of the characters aren't very compelling or interesting, and a lot of it's just a straight up power fantasy. Now, that's not to say that power fantasies can't be good or fun, but in this case, I don't think what we get from the series is what I would consider good. So, in order to talk about it, let's first talk about the premise. The premise of the show is a middle manager at a salaryman company of some kind is a demon lord in an VR MMO called Yggdrasil. He's pretty competent at being a guild leader by delegating tasks to certain people, and he is a very good PvP player, and those are about his only two skills. He's not super intelligent, he's not very clever, but he is good at those two things, and so he is the guild leader of a very elite guild in this MMO. And so he is reminiscing about all the times that he had in this VR MMO that's about to shut down. And so he goes around, messes with a couple settings of the NPCs that the other players made just for fun. And then as soon as the clock ticks down for the MMO to end, it does, but he's still in the game. And so he is then not logged out, but instead taken to another world. The plot of the story is very typical isekai fantasy, where the main character is overpowered, and it's usually for a comedic effect, and the comedic effect in this is particularly at least slightly compelling because he's not as intelligent as the NPCs that his friends created, but he is at least competent enough to, one, fight whatever enemies that he will face, and two, he is good at putting people where they need to be in order for him to succeed. So he doesn't really have to be that intelligent, and he makes a couple mistakes, but they end up actually being relatively helpful for his guild. And so there's a lot of comedic moments like that, and sometimes it works out okay, other times it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, we get the joke. So there's definitely a certain amount of tolerance that you have to have towards that kind of writing if you're going to watch this. And if you like isekais well enough, then you'll probably be fine, but I could see a pretty decent chunk of people not enjoying that, and I understand. Now, that's not to say that there isn't any positives to the show. I definitely say that the music as a whole is quite good. I love all the opening themes and some of the ending themes. Some of them are definitely not as strong as the opening themes, but are more than adequate. And I'll give you some examples here. And as you can see, they're quite good. And honestly, the artwork for the show is particularly pretty. Now, what I'm showing on the screen currently is, I believe, for the light novel, and yeah, I love how this looks. I love like the usually warm orangey tone that everything has, but then like all the colors pop out as well, where like you see this beautiful red on Evil Eye, and then you see Ainzel Gon, you see his purples and his like off-white skeleton, and like everybody looks super great, and all their characters are portrayed very accurately. Yeah, I'd say the artwork also is definitely a big plus Now, that's not to say that it's perfect. Overall, I would say watch the anime. And the problem with the anime is that the CGI monsters and people that they use sometimes, particularly in large battle events, look particularly bad. I'll put up an example of the lambs that were in the massacre scene in particular, right here. And as you can see, they just don't look very good. They move kind of weirdly, they don't really match the background at all, and it just looks awful because it's in the daytime, so like you could really see how off they look in that lighting as well. And some of that could be hidden if you just, you know, turn the lighting a bit different and kind of hide those effects, but within daylight scenes, it looks really bad. it just looks bad. And then you could see in the scene with the soldiers that the soldier models aren't very good either. It's just really distracting, and it kind of looks bad in comparison to the otherwise good art and designs of the other characters. So it's not great. Overall, if you are to watch the series, I would seriously recommend watching the anime. The problem with the light novel is that there's a lot of inner monologuing that's just completely pointless and sucks to read because it's mostly about information that you already know or could easily guess yourself. And the characterization that goes in those scenes just isn't very compelling either, because a lot of the characters within the series are two-dimensional. Now, that's not to say that there aren't half-decent ones. For example, I think Ainzel Gon is at least relatively compelling as a main character. And I think some of the monsters within the guild are interesting enough. Like Albedo, clearly two-dimensional, but at least you can see why she reacts the way that she does, and sometimes she has some character moments that are half-decent, but generally, I think the show's main appeal is just watching a competent protagonist and his underlings go about destroying a fantasy world in order to rule it, and if you're into that kind of thing, then it'll do its job. It's just, I could see a lot of people not liking that, and I mean, I like it, but that's because I'm scum. No, I'm mostly joking. It's just, yeah, it has a very particular, like, it has the same appeal as like a power gamer would in a game where, like, ooh, look at the big levels. Look at the big levels, do big damage and do big boom bam bing bam. And like, ooh. And yeah, so it's alright. It's just, you're never gonna be on the edge of your seat expecting anything other than the protagonist's side to win any battle or anything like that. And so I could see people just not being interested after a very short period of time. But I don't know. I think the reason why I watch it mainly is due to the fact that it's a combination of things that I find interesting. Because it has elements of D&D, World of Warcraft, MMOs, and VR, and I don't know. There's just something about the look of the show and about the overall presentation of the show that I find strangely enjoyable, and so that's the main reason why I watch it, to be honest. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video despite it being short. I mostly didn't want to talk about the plot because it's not that important to the overall idea of the show. It's mostly about exploration of a world that the author wrote and how the protagonist is taking over said world. So, but if you have anything you want to discuss, I'm more than happy to talk with you in the comments. And I guess that's it. This is Timothy Belfry signing off.